So this is me on GitHub and LinkedIn and the DC Slack. Feel free to send me a message. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about me and my coding journey, how I ended up here. But prior to college, I really had nothing to do with computers. My father and my brother were both really into programming. I was like, this is not me. I barely knew what a file system was. So, but my dad managed to convince me to give computer engineering a try. I was going to do electrical engineering, and he was like, you might be good at coding. You should give it a try. So I did, and it turned out that I actually quite liked coding, even though I hadn't done any of it before college. So when I was in college, they taught C, C++, and Java. So that was where I started. And then after I graduated, I went to work on satellite simulators for a contractor for NASA Goddard. And the simulators, we were trying to do sort of real-time simulations. So we were doing them in C and C++. So that was fairly like low-level stuff. A lot of like reading off serial ports and like being like, okay, the first 3 bits mean X and the next 3 bits mean something or other else. So that was my first job. And then I went to graduate school in electrical engineering. And in grad school, I was sort of I was doing digital signal processing. So it was a lot of coding, and it was MATLAB and some Java. So that was my first experience spending a lot of time coding in an interpreted language with MATLAB rather than a compiled language. And around that time, I had some lab mates who were like, there's this language, Python. It's awesome, much better than MATLAB. But I was kind of like, I know MATLAB. I would like to write my dissertation. So I'm not going to learn another language right now. So I graduated. And then I came back here to Maryland, and I went to work for an Earth Science Data Archive, also as a contractor for NASA at Goddard. And when I got there, they hired me in part because of my Java skills. And then we ended up ditching the system that we'd written in Java because it wasn't working for us, and we moved to Perl. So that's when I learned Perl. Not a fan of Perl from the start, like not just the philosophy of Perl, like a million ways of doing the same thing with really obscure syntax. So I don't like Perl. I'm sorry. There are people who love Perl. I'm not one of them. So then about 4 or 5 years ago, I made the switch to Python. So actually, Goddard had a 3-day seminar for people who wanted to learn Python, particularly who were doing sort of scientific computing kind of things. And so I went to this seminar, and that was enough to get me going. And I've been very happily in Python ever since. And so that is kind of my coding journey and how I ended up here. All right, so we're in Zoom. If you can put questions in the Zoom chat, that will be great. I will try to keep up with them. I do have them on a second screen here. And so the other thing is that you need to get the Ipython prompt ready to go. So now I have Ipython installed on my computer, so I'm going to go ahead and use it there in general. But if you don't have Ipython installed, we're going to use something called mybinder, and we're going to abuse mybinder because mybinder is really designed to do Jupyter notebooks, and we're going to be doing stuff at the command line. But I'm going to show you how to do it. So you're going to click on that link that Stephanie has very kindly put in the chat. We're going to click first. Oh, where'd my mouse go? Proceed. And it will take you to Binder. And let me pull this up here. So it's going to look like this. So just as an FYI, the way mybinder works is that you put some special files in a GitHub repo somewhere that tell it how to configure things. And then it builds a Docker container that has all that stuff that you need for your tutorials, and it copies in the tutorials and things. So if you have Jupyter notebooks that you'd like to share with someone, my binder is very nice. It does something similar to Colab, and I believe my binder was there first. So I think Colab is copying. All right. So can I get some like +1s in the chat if you're where I am here, that you've got the Jupyter page up, just so I know that you've gotten there. Nobody's gotten there. Yeah, let us know if you're having any trouble.
And I know for mine, Christy, when I started it up, it took a minute. It had to kind of spin for a bit. Is that normal?
That's normal. Yeah, it's spinning up the container. Okay, so we're getting some, yay, okay. All right, so we'll give it another minute or so. Right, so you're gonna get, it's gonna look like Jupyter Notebook because it is Jupyter Notebook, but I'm gonna show you how to get a terminal. Like I said, this is a cheat. This is an abuse of iBinder in some ways, but it will let you get an IPython terminal without having to install anything on your computer.
You said this builds a Docker container. Is that what you said?
It does. So behind the scenes, it builds a Docker container based on, in this case, you see this requirements.txt file where I think I just put Ipython in there. So the base image has Python in it, and then anything else that you need to install, any Python libraries, you specify in this requirements.txt. There's some other ways to do it too, but that's the easiest way. Alrighty, so I'm going to kind of assume that folks have it up and they either have an Ipython in a terminal or they've got this. And so what you're going to do is you're going to click on New on the upper right, and you're going to click Terminal. And that's how you get a terminal, which is very useful. Okay, and so then you're going to get this terminal, and you're going to type Ipython, and then you're going to get an Ipython prompt.
Christine, can you zoom in on that screen?
I can.
That's pretty good.
Okay, all right. So, do folks have a terminal window?
Hey, where was the new button? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I apologize. Right. So, it is on the upper right, the new, and you just click on terminal.
Got it.
So I'll just leave this up here in case folks have had trouble. Everyone got it? Anybody having difficulties? Okay, so hopefully you have a terminal here. I have a terminal. Where is it? Sorry, too many windows up. I'm actually going to do this not in that terminal. Hello? In this, I apologize. I have too many of these things up. Give me a second here. Nope, that one's too small. Hit enter to continue. All right. Okay. I'm going to run. Hello? I'm going to run. Naturally, my terminal window has decided to misbehave. All right. So fortunately, I have this one here in the Jupyter Notebooks. I am going to use that one. All right. Let me go over to my own instructions so that I remember what order I was going to do all of this in. Give me a second here. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that the prompt looks a little different. So it's going to be numbered and it's going to say in one, something like that. rather than the triple, the greater than like this, like you have for a Python prompt. So that's how you know you're in Ipython. If you see this in one, it's Ipython. So the first thing you can do is just print hello world, right? So like the simplest Python script ever. So this is going to be very similar to a regular Python prompt. And you should see, hello world. So I'm afraid I cannot see the chat right now. So let me go back and see. Everyone is familiar, hopefully, with hello world. Any problems?
The chat looks good.
Okay. All right. All right. So now we're going to clear the screen. Like every command line tool like this, every interpreter should have a clear. It's a huge pain when it doesn't. So clear. All right. Now, one of the things that's nice about Ipython is that it has help, like the doc strings are built in. So if I wanted to get information about the print function, I can just type print ? And voila, I have the doc string. So this is really useful if, if you can't quite remember what the inputs are to some kind of a function, you can just ask Ipython. You don't have to go and Google it. Although a lot of times I do that anyway, but it's there, which is very nice. And you don't have it in regular Python. So you can also execute shell commands. So if I do something like with an exclamation mark, that means that I want it to execute in the shell. So if I do ~ls, it shows all the stuff that's in the current directory, which is also really nice because sometimes, yes, in Python, you can, import OS and you can tell it, I don't even remember how to do it. You can use Python to list files in a directory, but it's much faster to just say ~ls when you're trying to remember what the name of the file is that you're trying to load into something. So I think that that's super helpful. So you can do this with, arbitrary commands. So, I'm here in Linux. I can say that and it tells me that I'm in the home directory, right? But it turns out that actually for a lot of common commands, you don't even have to do the pound. If I type ls, it will actually just do a very nice ls. So that you cannot do with a regular Python command, but it's surprisingly useful. Any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think we have a good question from Deb. So she is in Ipython on the desktop and she's running into some issues.
So everything works, but clear doesn't work, but like the exclamation point doesn't work, but the PWD does work and the LS,
Interesting.
So it's like it's a mixture of these, but it works in my terminal version in your container, in your Docker container.
Yeah, I wonder what version you have, Deb. Do you know?
Yeah.
3.7 something. I just looked it up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
3.85.
Okay, so that's your Python version. Do you know what the Ipython version is?
No. Oh, okay. Ipython 7.19.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Mine is 7.8. I don't know if that makes a difference. I'm also running it on the desktop.
Yeah. So
are you running under Windows or are you running under Mac or Linux?
No, I'm running under Windows.
So that could be it too. ls is not a command that Windows generally understands. So
no, that's it. I'm working off the terminal and it does understand it. ls does what it's supposed to. It just the exclamation point doesn't work.
Interesting.
Right, but what I mean is if you I'm going to try to bring up PowerShell again. No, I'm just not having any luck with PowerShell today. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. It's interesting. It's just a little different, but it's not a big deal.
Right. Okay. So here I am. This is. I don't know if you can. Is this too small? This font might be too small. So this is a Windows prompt. And if I type ls, oh my gosh, it worked. PowerShell has all. Okay.
Yeah.
You can tell now how long it's been since I've used Windows.
Yeah. Yeah. No, PowerShell now works.
Okay.
Yeah. No. All the Unix commands work, but what's interesting is like the exclamation point
Right.
for them doesn't work.
Okay, interesting. So when I've been doing this, I tend to reflexively go to Linux. And so so I don't know that I even have Python installed in Windows.
Well, it's okay. I'm fine doing it this way because I do it for other languages. It's just that I just thought it was interesting.
That is interesting. Okay, so if you use Windows subsystem for Linux, which is what I do whenever I do development on here, and you type ~ls in Ipython, then it does work. So, or it's a version, or who knows. Okay, but that's super interesting. Thank you for that data
Yeah,
point.
Deb, what do you get if you do exclamation mark? Oh, how do you do ls in regular Windows? It's dir.
dir.
Yeah, but I'm in the terminal shell in Ipython, right? So it's different. So if I type in ls, or well, dir, I don't know if it would work. It doesn't
I'm curious
work.
if you do #dir, if it's smart enough to say, oh, you're on Windows.
#dir. It is not.
Or not pound, sorry, exclamation mark dir.
Exclamation mark dir. Yeah, that would be curious too.
It is smart enough.
Ah, sneaky,
Right.
sneaky. Okay.
So I think what's going on here is that when you just type ls, what you're actually doing is calling a function inside Ipython. When you
Call exclamation point dir. Yeah.
It's actually passing that exact string to the interpreter.
Yep. I totally get it. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. All right. That is fascinating. Good to know. Thank you. All right. So moving on to the next one. Let me see. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is take advantage of automatic indentation. So if I say def foo, no inputs to my function, and then I say print foo, do you see when I hit enter, it actually indented for me. It indented the print for me. So I didn't have to hit spacebar to get there. So I'll do another line here, Baz. And then if you hit enter twice, that's how it knows that you're done. So now I can, for example, call foo, and it prints foo Baz, which is wildly exciting. Okay, so the automatic indentation is nice because then you don't have to like be constantly hitting the space bar. Okay, so you'll want to actually do this, define, the function of your choice. If you just want to do hello world or whatever, just define something. And so now I am going to exit. And unlike Python, I don't have to type quit like this and call the function. Ipython is smart enough to know that if I type exit, I want to leave. If I type quit without the parentheses, it doesn't helpfully tell me that I probably wanted to call quit with parentheses. It just exits, which personally I think is fabulous because clearly that's what I wanted to do. Okay, so now that I've exited, I'm going to start up Ipython again. And what's really nice is that if I hit the up arrow, I get the commands that I called in order. So it has a session information. It's like a bash prompt or something where you can scroll backwards through your command history. And in fact, even better, you can search through your command history. So if I type PR and I hit the up arrow, it gives me print and the question mark because that's the last thing that in the history that I called that started with PR. And I can hit up arrow again and it gets hello world. So this is very, very nice. If you don't remember exactly what you did last time, you can kind of search through your history to see what you had before. So hopefully that is working for folks, but I highly recommend the history feature. It's very, very nice.
Christine, do you know how many rows it will store?
You know, I do not. I confess that I generally personally only use it for things that I probably tried the last time I ran IPython.
I
I'm
gotcha.
not
Okay. So
trying
it's
to
like
find
you
something.
quit it, you came back in. Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
poking
yeah.
through mine and it just keeps going and going. So I'm like, wow, this thing stores a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a configuration somewhere, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
But that's a good question. I've never really thought of that. I don't remember what I've done that far back. So it's
Yeah, I
not
don't
terrible.
remember writing this code. Like, I don't know what
Well, there you go. Okay.
cool.
So that's history, which is very nice.
Can
And
I
then,
ask you a question?
yes, sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but when I typed exit, my terminal got stuck, kind of freeze kind of thing. So is it normal?
That is not normal. Are you in the Jupyter notebook?
Yes, the same terminal by using the new and then terminal. Oh yeah, I got the same thing like what you have right now.
Okay, so you got this Jovian at Jupyter, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I did not get the first one, but yes, I did get this one. Yeah.
So like if you type clear or any commands, it's just not taking any commands.
Let me try. Oh yeah, now it's not taking any command. It says closed or log out.
Okay. So here's what happened. So the thing about iBinder is that the system is set up so that if you don't touch it for a while, it just cleans up all your resources, which they kind of have to do, right? They're doing this for free. They're not charging you. So I think what happened was, unfortunately, you left it alone for too long. And so it thinks that you're done. So if you want to start again, you'd have to like actually restart by clicking on the iBinder thing. So I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. I was figuring that people were typing away and so it wouldn't happen, but it does happen if you let it sit.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much. So I can start the new notebook, new terminal all again, right?
Right. So what you would do is click on that My Binder link and it would give you the whirling circly thing. And then you would, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we're actually getting kind of close to the end here. But one other, I guess I should start IPython again. So one other feature of IPython that's very nice is that you can kind of carelessly copy and paste things from either the standard Python prompt or from an IPython thing, and you don't have to delete the prompt part. So if I type, this triple arrow print hello world, this line is not correct Python syntax, but it's going to look at this and say, oh, she's copying and pasting from Python somewhere. I'm going to get rid of those three arrows. So this is super useful, right? Because like maybe you've done some stuff in Python somewhere and you just want to copy and paste it in here and you don't want to have to worry about having to delete everything. So, you can do it from IPython as well. So if I say def, or I don't know, A equals 12, B equals 32, and then I copy and paste. Is this going to work? Middle click. Oh, copying. Okay, so it's not going to work into here. But if I type something where it looks like this is a prompt from IPython, and I say, C equals 45, it's going to accept that. And if I ask it what C is, it says 45. So this is, I think, a very lovely feature. And I have definitely used that one quite a lot. So this is sort of the end of my demo here. Just sort of, this is my personal top 10 for IPython and why it's so nice. And then in that README in the GitHub, I do have a link to lots more details of IPython and all the beautiful things that you can do with it. I should mention that actually Ipython is quite old, and Ipython is where they initially came up with the notebooks. So if you look at this and if you look at this and you look at this in 1, in 2, you may notice that that looks kind of familiar, and it looks sort of like a Jupyter notebook. So in fact, like the folks who created Ipython, they created the Jupyter notebooks, and it used to be called Ipython notebooks. And then when they realized how cool this was, and other people said, hey, I want to do this for my language, that's when they actually renamed it to Jupyter. So this is kind of the origin of notebooks. So this was sort of before they had notebooks, they had this. So I highly recommend Ipython, play around with it. I find personally that like I so rarely use the Python prompt that like when I'm forced to do so, I end up doing things that you can only do in Ipython, and then I start cursing quietly under my breath because I can't do them. So hopefully this gave you a little intro to Ipython, and you can sort of see what other people's top 10 features are. I don't know if there were any other questions.
Christine, can you pull up that you said you had a link to some more information if people want to dig deeper?
Yeah, so this is in the README for this tutorial, but here's the link. So I do want to emphasize that Ipython is not Python. Okay, so Ipython is just a command line tool that uses your Python installation behind the scenes. So it's not like you're installing a completely new version of Python. It's just sort of a tool on top of Python.
What did they use to build it?
I'm sorry?
What did they use to build the Ipython command line shell?
I have no idea. I don't know if it's written in Python or it's written in C. I'll bet that Ipython has a GitHub. There we go.
I can just wiki it. Thanks, though.
Yeah, so I think you could look through here and like somewhere they'll tell you how to build it. So presumably you can, from that, you'll be able to tell what they did it in.
Easy, thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, so I guess I'm going to add, it's not a question, but some comments. If you do decide to get into Ipython, it has some cool add-ons, like one of which we actually used at work, which was this time it function, where we had some really slow functions, and we were just using print statements everywhere to kind of try to figure it out. And then someone said, oh, Ipython, we should use this time it feature. And it printed out these really cool summaries of like how long your function took to run, where it was slow, so it was kind of neat for that. Like if you have something that is just kind of misbehaving, but I think it has a lot of things like that, right, Christine, where you can just find these crazy little add-ons where it's like, oh, add in this feature for Ipython.
So I have to confess that I've never used the widget kind of stuff with the Ipython command line. I've only ever done it like the time it magic, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Magic in the Ipython notebooks. So I actually did not know that you could also run them when you're running just Ipython at the command line.
Yeah, I think you could, if you want, you can import your code, and then like if you have a function or something, this is how we were doing it. You could import your code and then just run it with that little magic time it, and then it would spit out like, hey, it took this much time. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know that time it is particularly an Ipython thing. I think that time it is a Python library, but they have.
Oh no, I mean the actual time it, like with the magic one, because time it itself, this one doesn't give you a lot of helpful information, but the Ipython time it gives you some more data.
There you go. So yes, I agree. I actually at work did a presentation on Jupyter Notebooks because we got a lot of folks who are not familiar with them. And Time It was definitely one of the ones that I was like, this magic is awesome.
It is magic. Yeah, it was really cool.
I'm trying to remember the other ones that, I mean, there's like a bajillion of them. There's the Bash one. Like, I guess if you're running again on a Linux or a Mac machine, you can have the Bash magic. So you can have an entire like section of code that's just a Bash script, which could be useful. Debug. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Debug. That one's a good one too. And what's funny is when you do a presentation on this, you actually go and read the documentation and you're like, wow, I didn't even know that existed.
We have a question. Is Jupyter set up to be seamless with Ipython? Do you know if that's still, I know like it's the kernel, but is that still the case that anything you would do in one would work in the other?
So Jupyter, right? So Jupyter, like I said, it actually started out as Ipython notebooks. And then people said, hey, I want to do this for C, or I want to do this for Java, or I want to do this for other languages. And so that's where this kernel idea came along. So Jupyter is kind of an interface. And then you can implement that interface. As long as you implement that interface for other languages, you can create a new kernel. But the classic kernel is Python. So, I mean, it arose out of Python. So I can't see how Python would ever go away from Jupyter.
And it looks like a lot of like that, the %sign stuff does seem to map over to Jupyter, at least from like the few that I've played around with.
Right. Yeah, I have never tried one that didn't work in Jupyter. So, yeah. But again, I've only ever done it with Python. I've never actually tried it with any of the other languages. Okay, so I don't know. Were there any other comments? Anybody else use Ipython and like it? I mean, I don't know. Oh, matplotlib. Like if you do data analysis, you've used the matplotlib magic, I'm sure. So I think I'm kind of done, unless I'm trying to remember if there were any other slides. I think there was a slide that, where was it? Here we go. All right, so that was the, oh, wow, I had an overview and I forgot, I'm sorry. So we were looking at the interactive command shell in case you hadn't guessed. And then, yeah, this has the link again to what Ipython is. And then we just did our examples. And then some resources is, you can read the documentation on Ipython. Yes, and so thank you very much to the folks who helped me get this set up. I am not a Zoom person. At work, we're not allowed to use Zoom, so I'm glad it worked. And yes, there are the credits. So I think I'm done. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight to see this.
I had a quick question. The
Sure.
magic functions seem powerful. When you're talking about using the timeIt function, is that something that needs to be applied to every function within your script, or is this something that you can kind of apply at like more globally?
So when I've used it for cells in Jupyter, but it sounded like, I apologize, I'm not sure who was talking before, has used it a lot more carefully than I have to get like actual more detailed information.
Yeah, I get it. That was me. This is Stephanie. So what we've done is we've had it in actual, so we have actual Python scripts, and then at the bottom they have the like, if name equals __ main, blah, 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 run the script. And so we import the modules into Ipython command line and then just do that timeIt magic function with that run of the script. And so at that point, it'll just spit it out for you. So like if I have one, like a main function that calls basically everything else in my script or in my module in my Python file, right, it'll dump out the timings for each of those pieces.
I get it. Okay.
There's also there was another one that was super slick where it's similar, but it prints out like memory usage. So if you, are on a pretty like anemic machine and you're running into issues with that, that was another one where we found some memory leaks we didn't know we had. And so we were like, oh, you are amazing, Ipython. Because it was a similar thing of like, we were trying to just do it by printing out stuff with logging and print line.
I've done that before.
Yeah. And this was more magical. It gives you a little summary where it's like, hey, here's all your, here's your memory usage at each of these sections of the script. So I would definitely dig into it. It's a pretty powerful and pretty cool little trick to have.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I did, many years ago when I did MATLAB, it had a profiler that would do that to you. And inevitably, like the thing that you thought was taking all the time that you'd spend, hours staring at and trying to optimize was not the thing that was taking all the time.
Yeah, that's what we found. We had something stupid where it was like, oh, we had, this, we didn't realize that we were making a database call and casting the full result set to a list. And that was blowing up our Docker container because it was like thousands and thousands of rows.
Right.
Something silly like that.
In my case, it was usually like I was opening a bunch of files and I wasn't letting MATLAB like release memory in between or something. And so it was just like building a bigger and bigger and bigger thing until something blew up.
Cool. Do we have any other questions from people? Because I think we still have a few minutes if anybody else wants to jump in. You can type or you can feel free to talk. I think we're pretty open to either one.
So we have somebody here who sent me a message. Her name is Nira. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And she represents a Microsoft program that's helping high schoolers from underrepresented backgrounds. Nira, she requested about 5 minutes to talk about the program to us. So feel free to stay back and listen, or if you need to drop off, that's fine too. But maybe we can give Nira a few minutes to talk about her program.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
It's my turn now or no?
Hi, Nira. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for allowing me just to have a few minutes to kind of speak to everyone about the Microsoft Teals program. So Microsoft Teals is part of Microsoft Philanthropies. Let me turn my camera on. I feel funny talking to people and them not seeing me. Okay, there we go. Can you see me or no?
No, I'm still seeing your picture.
Okay, let's try this again. There we go.
There you go.
Okay, hi. All right, so Microsoft Teals we're part of Microsoft Philanthropies, and what we do is we partner high school computer science teachers with industry professionals to help build teacher capacity for computer science. So when you think about your high school teachers, math, ELA, etc., they usually go through like a pre-service program to kind of get them acclimated into the content before they get into any particular curriculum. And usually in high schools, computer science teachers are usually teachers who kind of transition out of math or science. So they don't have that pre-service experience that normal teachers would have for their content areas. So what we do is we have two different models. One is our co-teach model, and the other is our lab support model. And we basically just support the teachers as well as the scholars and the schools so that they can become better coders and then in return become better computer science teachers. So we have been expanding throughout the DMV region. Currently, we are in DCPS as well as PG County Public Schools. Loudoun County Public Schools, Fairfax County Public Schools, and will be next year in Baltimore City Public Schools. And so with that expansion, we of course need volunteers who are versed in the coding to help out those teachers. And primarily we are looking for more women volunteers because representation matters. And we hope that by some of the scholars seeing women in their class doing this work, that it then inspires them to want to continue in tech and computer science industry. Do I have any questions so far? Okay, great. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to drop a link to our website for TEALS, where you'll be able to kind of get a look at the TEALS program overall and how it works with the volunteers. Also, what I'm going to drop is just like a quick YouTube video. And this is a video from our Houston Independent School District. But they're just talking about the TEALS program, and you'll hear from some teachers about the program, as well as some volunteers and regional managers, just talking about their overall experience with the program. Do we have any questions?
What's the time commitment like for these two different volunteer roles?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So we do ask that our volunteers commit to the school year, as you'll be supporting a school. So school years generally last from about end of August, early September until end of May, mid-June. Now, will you be there every single day? No, you will not be there every day. So each class will have 2 to 4 volunteers that are supporting the teacher. So those volunteers usually show up 2 to 3 days out of the week. One of the things that we do ask from our schools is that they schedule the class for first period. And we ask that because generally high schools typically start fairly early in the morning before the general business day starts. So that gives the volunteer the opportunity to support the class as well as, still make it to work on time. We also have options for people who have more flexible schedules, who are able to, go midday and things of that nature to help support our volunteers. I mean, not support our volunteers, support our teachers. So if you're in a co-teach model, we have 2 different types of volunteers. One would be the volunteer teacher. And basically because in that co-teach, the teachers are still not very comfortable with computer science. So it's kind of like marrying 2 expertise. So you have the teacher who of course is the expertise in pedagogy, classroom management, lesson planning, differentiating instruction, things of that nature. And then a volunteer who is the expertise just in the coding. And pretty much we use Python and Java are 2 primary languages that the scholars learn. And then we have also cybersecurity, which is kind of a overall looking at the ins and outs of cybersecurity. And then we also have APCS principles, which kind of taps into all the realms of the computer science industry. And so if you're a volunteer teacher, it does require more time because you'll have to work with the teacher in terms of lesson planning, in which you'll be expected to teach the class 2 to 3 times a week. And with that process, it's a 2-year process with that. And it's like a weaning process. So initially you'll have a lot of responsibility, but as the teacher gets more comfortable with the coding, those responsibilities start to shift, where then the teacher takes on more roles and the volunteer teacher just becomes like that support to the teacher. And then they transition into lab support, which is usually 2 to 3 volunteers per class. And again, you're not expected to be there all 5 days of the week. You're only expected 2 to 3 days. And in that situation, you're kind of just, helping the class out during lab times. Usually the volunteers are like in breakout rooms, helping scholars, as well as they do different things, kind of like showing how the coursework connects to what they do in their jobs. And I think that's one of the most important pieces. I was a teacher before joining Teals. And, you know, when you're a teacher and you're talking to the kids about the industry and you're talking about these careers and you're trying to make the connections, sometimes the kids, it like goes in one ear and out the other because they can't see you as anything more than just the teacher. So having that industry professional in the room saying like, this was me yesterday at work making, you know, doing a loop or setting conditions, things of that nature, or this was me yesterday trying to debug something, or I thought my code was going to do this and it did something else. It just brings that real world connection to what they're doing so that they can see that this is something tangible and something that they can actually achieve. So that's another great question. So the question was asked about the eligibility to be a part of Teals. We asked that, you know, if you're going to be part of Teals, that you have, of course, coding experience. You could have experience in JavaScript or another coding languages. They sometimes really transfer well, and Python is one of those easy languages